expressing understanding, and then the second part is we're going to talk about the efficacy of online counseling. It's not new, but it is being embraced now since COVID. So we'll take a look at some of the research that has been done to determine if it's good or if it's bad. There are negatives and positives about it, of course, but since we're going to be doing that in order to get our counseling in, we need to talk about how well it works. Let's go ahead and get started. Expressing understanding. Being empathic involves connecting with clients by attuning to their thoughts and feelings. Of what is shared, one must consider the content that they're sharing, the feelings that they're sharing, and the possible meanings behind what they're saying. According to Norcross, the empathic practitioner attends to what is said and is at the periphery of awareness as well as what is said and is the focal awareness. And that's the most important part. A lot of times when we are talking to somebody, instead of listening completely, we're trying to compose in our minds what we're going to say back to them. Empathy is seeing the world as that person sees it, not as you would see it if you were in their situation. Feeling the way that people feel about the situation, understanding the meaning that the person is giving to the events, grasping the assumption that influences their particular worldview. The way you would feel is not unimportant, but it's not the most important thing. The most important thing about what they're saying is how they feel and how they're reacting to the situation. By being empathic, a practitioner can learn to connect with people from different backgrounds and experiences. The essence of building a client-practitioner relationship depends on whether the client feels understood. Clients will not share personal thoughts and feelings unless they feel understood. If a practitioner can establish a sense of empathic understanding with the client, they're more likely to build a therapeutic relationship. Expressing empathy means communicating an understanding of another person's experience, their behavior, their viewpoint, their meanings, and their feelings. Empathy involves restating their own words, your understanding in their own words. I'm sorry. Empathy involves restating in their own words your understanding of what the client is expressing. When a practitioner uses empathic understanding because the client feels understood, they're more likely to be open and trusting, to share more of their thoughts and feelings, to help clients who are having trouble expressing themselves. When a practitioner uses empathic understanding, they are validating the client's experience. It shows the client that the practitioner accepts and understands the client's experiences and concerns. This is especially important if the client has been told that their viewpoint is incorrect due to an abusive relationship. And of course, I've seen this many, many times, and sometimes I'll just strike up a conversation with somebody, and you can see that this individual really enjoys talking to somebody who accepts what they say, as if they were in a relationship that where they weren't being accepted or their word wasn't being accepted. I had a colleague in Montana whose husband she was never able to get a word in edgewise, and she was an English teacher, and so when she started talking to me, of course I would listen to her, um, uh, and I was being empathic, of course. I didn't really mean to, I guess, but uh, because she could never talk to her husband, she just talked my ear off. I'll tell you, it was really kind of interesting. Students often feel awkward or uncomfortable trying to express empathic understanding. Most societal norms don't allow people to talk about feelings. Nodding and saying, uh-huh, is less personal. Oh, come on, high five. No, left her hanging. When reflecting content, practitioners restate their understanding of what the client has said. This reflection of the client's reality indicates to the client that the practitioner is trying to understand. Are you saying, what I hear you saying is, as I understand it, it sounds like, and all you're actually saying is, I hear you. Practitioners must show that they are attuned to a client's emotional experiences, and they can do this by reflecting feelings. Besides what the client is saying, the client's feelings can be discerned from body language, tone of voice, and facial expressions. Reflecting feelings may be accompanied by a softer voice or leaning forward to imply deeper connection with what the client is expressing. More firmness if the client is expressing negative emotions like anger, disgust, dismay. Getting the client's feelings wrong is all right. As long as you share your hunches in a tentative voice, clients will probably feel comfortable correcting you. Some feelings are not as acceptable in select cultures as in others. Client, I haven't heard from any of them. If they are busy, they could at least email me. Practitioner, it sounds like you feel sad about that. Client sounding angry and speaking with a tight jaw. I feel like we just aren't getting anywhere. You seem to be feeling impatient with me and our progress. Client on a team. Some of the people on this team just aren't carrying their weight. Practitioner, I'm guessing you are feeling kind of frustrated. Client family member looking scared. When they start fighting and yelling, I just run up to my room. The practitioner, I wonder if you feel kind of scared. Client, yesterday out of the blue, I was one of the people they laid off. I'm not sure what I am going to do. Practitioner, wow, what shocking news. You look like you are feeling quite worried and upset. In common conversation, many people believe that they are reflecting feelings, but are actually expressing thoughts, opinions, or judgments. This is usually because the individual is saying, I feel that, instead of I feel, followed by an expression of feeling. I feel that you aren't paying attention to me. That's judgment. I feel that this assignment is too hard. That's another judgment. I feel that you children should clean your room. That is actually a directive. I feel that you always misunderstand me. Another judgment. I feel that this group is terrific. Another judgment. I feel that you have lots of strengths. Another judgment. In families and groups, practitioners may encourage members to reflect feelings. Especially in family situations, the practitioner can ask how they think someone else in the family feels. Often the problem in groups is that situations are engendering feelings that are not being expressed or acknowledged. It is possible to reflect both content and feelings in the same sentence. Using this skill allows the practitioner to include more information in their reflective comment. Client, can you believe it? She just left me a note telling me to leave. She hadn't said anything about leaving. Practitioner, it sounds like you were shocked when your wife told you that she wanted you to leave. Client, ever since I was laid off, I just mope around. I'm just at a loss. Practitioner, so in a way you were grieving about losing your job. Group at a picnic where one person didn't show up and didn't let them know. Practitioner, it seems like most of you are feeling hurt and a little angry that Marianne didn't show up at the picnic. Child client, it is no fun to watch football games since Dad left. Practitioner, so before your dad left, the two of you used to watch football games together, and now you feel sad and really miss him whenever the football games are on. Summarizing involves listening to considerable information provided by the client and communicating understanding of that information. Sometimes clients have so much information to share that practitioners listen for some time before making a reflecting comment. In the dominant culture in the United States, it is considered impolite to interrupt. But after taking in masses of information from the client, it is considered appropriate for the practitioner to interrupt in order to summarize. Client, I'm really trying hard in school, but I can't seem to get the grades that I want. Practitioner, you sound discouraged because even though you are working hard, you're disappointed about your grades. Client, when I am angry with my friend, I tell her how I feel, and then she does the same thing again. Again. Hello? Oh. Huh. All right. At the beginning of the session, as I remember our last meeting, we focused on how distressed you felt about your wife's roller coaster behavior toward you. When she is friendly, you feel good and get more work done. And when she is distant, you worry and have trouble sleeping and focusing on work. Is that how you remember it? At the end of a session to a group, we have discussed both sides of the issue and noted the pros and cons of each direction we could go. I appreciate how difficult this discussion has been for some of you. It appears that some members of the group seem to be troubled when people disagree with each other. During a session with the group, everyone in the group seems relieved that we have agreed to keep all the information confidential. At the end of a session with the family, Jamie and Mary, you seem to be ready to take charge of some of the family problems. It has been hard to disagree with your children on what should happen next. I can imagine that you children are upset because you think your opinions don't count. Reflecting meaning is when a practitioner expresses their understanding of the underlying meaning of what the client is discussing. Reflecting meaning is not as straightforward as understanding content or feelings. To understand meaning, practitioners need to not only be good observers of the behavior and tone that accompanies the content, but also must listen for the possible meaning a client is giving to a situation, an action, a thought, and a feeling, or a feeling. When working with clients who come from different backgrounds than our own, it is particularly important to express your tentative understanding of their meaning. For example, a student from a Chinese or Chinese American family must always get excellent grades or be considered a disgrace to the family. Client reflecting meaning. Client wringing her hands and looking worried. I thought we had a good marriage until my husband told me that he lost his job and spent our family money on seeing call girls. We are very religious and want to put this marriage back together. Practitioner, I hear you value your marriage and at the same time are shocked and worried about your husband's behavior. Is that right? Counseling group member, I really enjoy spending time with the man I am dating, but my job is so demanding these days that I am feeling stressed and worried about getting everything done. Practitioner, it sounds like you really value time with George and also want to do a good job at work. Family members, since Bob the father lost his job, it seems like we go from one stress to the next all the time. It is like everyone is worried most of the time, not at all like it used to be. Practitioners, so the stress related to Bob being unemployed is affecting everyone. Sounds like you are longing for the fun times you used to have in your family. Task group member, finishing this project is taking forever. I am sick of having to do so much extra work. I wonder if it is worth it. Practitioner, you sound frustrated and kind of discouraged too. It sounds like you wonder if the project is as important as you once thought. Is that right? Pause for a response. How are the rest of you feeling? When developing a relationship, it is important to deal directly with diversity variables. For many clients, having a worldview similar to that of the practitioner is more important than differences in age, ethnicity, race, gender, sexual orientation, education, and physical differences. Language can prove to be a barrier, even when the practitioner and the client speak the same language. One may speak in slang, one may speak using a great deal of jargon. The client may be from a region that the practitioner is not familiar with. Different generations may use the same words and phrases differently, like groovy. It is important to express empathy in cases where the client is from a different ethnic group, a different age, gender, religion, has different physical abilities. Conveying that you completely understand how they feel is rarely accurate and hardly useful. Your goal is to understand how the client feels, what they experienced, and what meaning that experience had for them. Empathic understanding increases the client's sense of being understood. It takes considerable courage to openly discuss concerns with a stranger. And that is the end of chapter 8. So let's go ahead and jump into counseling online. Let me take a quick drink. I'm drinking cider today. Pressed it myself. It's a little tart. Psychologists commonly refer to any therapy delivered by telecommunication tools or devices as telepsychology. You may hear it called web therapy, phone therapy, text therapy, or online therapy. Anytime you're interacting with a psychologist using a website, a phone, or a mobile app, you could be taking part in telepsychology services. Technology can contribute to an evolution in how people receive psychotherapy or work with a psychologist. Researchers are taking great interest in telepsychology and telehealth, evaluating how well it works, especially compared to in-person, in-office psychotherapy sessions. But much like the technology, the research is still new, and there is a lot science doesn't yet know. There are a few points to consider before signing up for any services that are offered exclusively online or by telephone. It can be convenient. Online therapy can take less time away from the office or your workday or worry about traffic. No need to travel miles to meet up with your psychologist. Dial a number or log in to a site, and the session can happen wherever you are comfortable. Now, it's really kind of interesting because one of my colleagues was getting counseling. It's a colleague that's no longer at the college, but she was getting counseling using telepsychology, teletherapy. What do we call it? Telepsychology. Okay, teletherapy. It was really kind of interesting too because she had to call her psychologist once a week to check in. Really kind of fascinating, and that in itself was a fascinating story. She already had a PhD, and she was thinking that she wanted to be a counseling psychologist because she was so good at giving advice. So she decided to take a counseling course, get into a counseling program, and her plan was to get a counseling certificate or to become a counselor. And she was not a counselor. She didn't teach counseling psychology. She taught other types of psychology, but she thought that she could do it. So what happened was that when she took her first class, she realized that she had problems that she'd never dealt with. And of course, and I talk about this from time to time, if you have a problem and you haven't dealt with it, then what's going to happen when you start getting into your counseling? is that you're going to start trying to fix yourself when you're actually counseling your clients. In other words, because you have that problem that you've never dealt with, you're going to be continually dealing with that problem. Let me give you an example from my own life. When I started counseling, my first wife left when my son was 9 months old and my daughter was 2.5. Well, no, she wasn't that old. She was older than that. She was about 3.5, I guess. And my son was 9 months old. And of course that was very painful, and it's something that I machoed through. But what I hadn't dealt with was the blowback from all those problems, the things that I just pretended were okay, but weren't actually okay. And so when I started in my counseling program, that's one of the first things I realized was, hey, you need to deal with this, dude, or you're going to be assuming that every lady that runs out on her husband is your ex-wife or acts like your ex-wife. And of course, I did, and everything turned out okay. But you got to deal with your problems. If you haven't dealt with your problems, you're going to be reminded of them constantly, and you're going to be treating your own clients as if they were you, trying to fix that problem. A lot of people get into psychology because they have a problem that they need to deal with. And if you don't deal with that problem, then you probably shouldn't be doing any counseling. Okay, so here we go. Compared to traditional in-person therapy, it can sometimes appear less expensive. Some apps will advertise pricing that provides unlimited use for a weekly or monthly fee. Or the online session may seem significantly lower than in-office visits. If you're not interested in using health insurance for psychotherapy, this can be a benefit. Online communication is very comfortable for many people, especially younger adults or those who use technology often. More people are using email, webinars, and text messaging to communicate, and it can seem more comfortable or easier than talking to someone in person, especially when revealing personal or private information. It can provide access to those who can't get to an office. In some rural communities, the nearest psychologist office may be an hour or two drive away. Some people with chronic illnesses or disabilities may not be able to drive or be easily able to leave their home. In these situations, web or telephone-based therapy may be their only option for help. The research hasn't yet shown that standalone therapy online or via texting is effective for everyone in every situation. Some sites advertise that they offer therapy, but those claims may be misleading or false. For example, the people behind the apps may not be licensed or qualified to provide therapy. Licenses are granted by each state with their own laws and rules, much like each state determines what residents must know to earn a driver's license. But unlike driver's licenses, which allow you to legally operate a car in all states, a healthcare provider is limited to providing services in the state in which they are licensed. The provider must be licensed in the jurisdiction where you are located, and making that determination may be difficult to do if you don't know where he or she is physically located. Psychotherapy works in part because psychologists ensure that clients have a safe, private space to share deeply personal and sometimes difficult stories, thoughts, or emotions. What happens and is said in a therapy office stays there with the exception of a few situations. The site or app you use should, at the minimum, be HIPAA compliant and have the ability to verify your identity and your therapist's identity. Many insurance companies cover the treatment of mental health and substance abuse disorders, but online therapy or web therapy services are often not covered or reimbursed by most insurance providers. A total of 62 participants suffering from depression. Oh, this is some research. And that's actually 62 people I picked up. Not that those kids have that kind of problem, but it's a picture with 62 people in it. A total of 62 participants suffering from depression were randomly assigned to the therapist-supported internet-based intervention group, 32 and 30, there were 30 in the face-to-face group and 32 in the internet-based intervention group. The 8-week interventions were based on cognitive behavioral therapy principles. The intention to treat analysis yielded no significant between group differences, online versus face-to-face group, for any of the pre to post treatment measurements. The post-treatment, both treatment conditions revealed significant symptom changes compared to before the intervention. Let me take a drink on that. A total of 113 consecutive patients were randomly assigned to 10 weeks of this is another, this is more research. A total of 113 consecutive patients were randomly assigned to 10 weeks of either guided internet delivered CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, 53, or group cognitive behavioral therapy. There were 60 of those. After treatment and at a 6-month follow-up, patients were again assessed by the psychiatrist blind to treatment condition. They found no statistically significant differences between the two treatment conditions using a mixed models approach to account for missing data. Group CBT utilized considerably more therapist time than did the internet CBT. 2 new studies suggest online therapy to be effective for treating mental health issues. Online therapy is increasingly popular, particularly among people who live in rural areas and cannot easily get to the therapist office or who are concerned about the costs of in-person therapy. New technology may pose some concerns, and the security of online therapy continues to be an issue, but research suggests the benefits may be significant. The first study published in the Canadian Medical Association Journal reviewed studies of online cognitive behavioral therapy conducted between 2000 and 2012. CBT is a widely used and well-researched form of therapy, with most studies saying in-person forms of this treatment are highly effective. CBT focuses on reducing negative thoughts and thereby changing behavior and alleviating symptoms. Most of the studies tracked participants for a relatively short period of time after ongoing therapy, ranging from 8 weeks to about 2 years. Researchers found online CBT could effectively reduce symptoms of depression and other mental health issues. In some cases, online CBT was even more effective than traditional in-person therapy. Most online CBT sessions focused on short-term goals and symptom relief. Because the studies did not track participants for an extended period of time, the researchers do not know if the symptoms were permanently alleviated. The team that conducted the analysis cautions that some human connection is lost with online therapy, but they also say the evidence supporting online therapy's effectiveness is significant. Another study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association Psychiatry looked at how online therapy affects the well-being of new doctors. Young doctors often work long hours, including nights and weekends, and the stress of those long shifts can lead to mental health issues such as depression and suicidal thoughts. One previous study found that suicidal thoughts increased 4-fold during a medical residency. Researchers looked at 200 first-year medical residents working 80-hour weeks and overnight shifts. Compared to doctors who received no online therapy, doctors who received 4 30-minute online sessions before beginning their residency had fewer suicidal thoughts. Because the sessions were delivered online, researchers say it might be possible to provide such treatment to other doctors while still keeping costs low. And this is one I just added, Gupta, Goel, and Raymond. This is out of India. EmoAid. There we go. Efficacy of online mental health program, EmoAid, during the COVID-19 pandemic. Some of my students talk about how the pandemic has changed things, and I thought I would find out about mental health during the pandemic. Wait a minute, that needs to be an N. The pandemic. There we go. Better, much better. Okay. Just like everyone else worldwide, the lockdown due to the COVID-19 pandemic caught the mental health providers in New Delhi, India, flat-footed. Flat-footed, get it? Number 58, flat-footed. China, Spain, and the United States, Turkey, Italy, Iran, Nepal, and Denmark reported mental health levels as high as anxiety 58%, depression 48%, PTSD 53%, distress 38%, and stress 82%. This opened the door for a new online program called EmoAid. Weiner and colleagues developed an online cognitive behavioral therapy program, My Health 2. The Center for Child and Adolescent Wellbeing started an online program called EmoAid to address the psychological issues in the community. Emo stands for emotion, not somebody who paints their fingernails black and wears black lipstick. EmoAid is a flagship online experiential learning program of the CCAW. CCAW is Center for Child and Adolescent Welfare. EmoAid is a program targeted at individuals to help them understand and resolve emotional issues by teaching them various techniques such as neuro-linguistic programming, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing, acceptance therapy, narrative therapy, and yoga, which can be used during distress hours. Gupta et al. In 2022 measured the efficacy of the new technique by recruiting 146 participants between the ages of 15 and 72 in a pre-test, post-test, and 3 weeks post-test mental health measurement after 5 sessions of EmoAid. The results of the study highlight the efficacy of the program, EmoAid, as the mean values of depression, anxiety, and stress symptoms reduced significantly. The program was found to ease the distress for a considerable time, as maintenance effect post 3 weeks of the program was also observed. Erard, Bottini, and Riva Crugnola in 2022. Effectiveness of an online versus face-to-face psychodynamic counseling intervention for university students before and during COVID-19 period. The COVID-19 pandemic has increased online counseling interventions, including those aimed at university students. The principal aim of the study was to evaluate the effectiveness of the online counseling intervention during the COVID-19 pandemic, comparing it to the effectiveness of the face-to-face intervention. 34 students, mean age 23.74, 27 of them were female, who requested online university counseling during COVID-19 were compared with 81, 22.8, 60 females, students who requested university face-to-face counseling before the pandemic. The psychopathological problems were assessed with the Symptom Checklist 90 revised, attachment styles with Attachment Style Questionnaire, Adverse Childhood Experiences with Adverse Childhood Experiences Questionnaire, and the life satisfaction with the life satisfaction scale. At the pre-intervention phase, psychological distress was similar in both groups with no differences in the general severity index, and there were no significant differences for secure-insecure attachment, adverse childhood experiences, and life satisfaction. The online counseling intervention during the pandemic was effective in reducing psychological distress scales as depression, obsessive compulsive, interpersonal sensitivity, and anxiety. The face-to-face counseling intervention was effective in reducing psychological distress in all subscales and in increasing the level of life satisfaction. Attachment style did not moderate the effectiveness of online and face-to-face interventions. And that is the end of the lecture. So I'll talk to you again next week. We'll tackle chapter 9 at least.